We are recording, and now I'm going to play the correct intro. Hello, welcome back to Showboys. We're here to discuss the penultimate episode of House of David, Season 1. And of course, as they have been all season, I'm joined by Tim and Nina of Bearfruit Podcast. How you guys doing tonight?
Fantastic.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. This was a really good episode, and literally just watched it. So hopefully the discussion tonight will be super awesome and very fresh in my mind. But yeah, how'd you guys like it?
I thought
Part
it was
one, David and Goliath, part one.
It was real good.
It was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. We watched it a couple days ago, so I'm trying to make sure I remember everything that happened.
There was a lot that happened.
There was a lot.
Yeah, it was one of those ones where like a lot happened, but not really a lot happened, but also like a lot actually happened.
Yeah.
And one thing that I found super cool about this episode are all of the biblical references that happened throughout.
Yes.
It's just like one of those episodes that's jam packed. So I'm excited to get into that stuff. But yeah, guys, there's only one episode left. David and Goliath Part 2 next week. Did this episode kind of fit what you guys thought would come in episode 7 with kind of how it ended with a cliffhanger and all that stuff?
We knew it was going to be a cliffhanger, but there's a couple times where we paused it, kind of like Nina's like, "This is what's going to happen." I'm like, "Well, maybe this is going to happen." So we kind of like toss it back and forth, and we were both wrong.
Yeah.
But I think they ended it in a really good way.
Yeah.
It was a good cliffhanger without having a like complete overlap in the last 2 episodes. So I think they did a great job.
Yeah, I thought it was good. We're getting back around to like where the Bible picks up again, where things are starting to happen with that, because there was a lot of filling in between the scriptures there that they were doing, but they did a fantastic job. I think they did a really good job.
Yeah. And maybe one of the few shows that could end an episode on a literal cliffhanger, like overlooking the valley.
Literal cliff.
But yeah, so when we go through this, we'll try to stick with the character arcs, but some things kind of overlap, and like we said, there's like not many events take place in the episode, but like a lot of stuff is set in motion.
Yeah.
And we can start with David, and we'll probably end with David, but we see him back. I think like half of the season has started with a scene of David playing his harp somewhere.
Yes.
Basically.
And I kind of like at first got some like Arabian Nights vibe, like from Aladdin when he first started playing. Yes. I was like, oh dang.
Actually, Nina even made a comment. She's like, I like how it has like a bit of an Arabian feel, because like that's true to the area.
Yeah.
And, it definitely felt like that.
Yeah. But we see, of course, last episode ended with Jonathan bringing the news back to Saul about the Philistine army gathering and marching towards them. So at the end of episode 6, Saul rallies the Israelites and he says, "We're going to do what we always do, fight." And so with that, all the able-bodied men are summoned to battle, right? So David's out, in his own little world playing his harp, while Jesse prepares his brothers for battle. One of his brothers is like, I don't want to go.
Don't send me.
I'm basically, he's like, I'm handicapped. I'll be anything. Just don't let me go.
Literally anything, and just don't send me to war.
Yeah. And then meanwhile, you have David who's like begging to go. And I love it. His brother is just like, yeah, send him.
Absolutely. I'll watch sheep.
Yeah, come on. Seems fair to me. But Jesse refuses to send David, and we'll find out a little bit later why. But one of the cool things that we got to see was an explanation of the early vision that David had. I think in like, the first 3 episodes, he tells Samuel, because again, we're going to be jumping around, so we'll just talk about this part here. But Samuel later comes to the house, the literal house of David, and has a chat with Jesse and David. But in this conversation, David's like explaining how he has dreams and visions, and he tells Samuel about this dream where he's along a stream at the base of these huge, beautiful mountains, and there's a warrior standing there. And when he asks the warrior who he is, like, he won't let him come near. And we find out. What did we find out? Tim, do you remember what we found out?
I'm trying to remember whose vision it was that he referenced. Joshua's vision. Yeah, I remembered for sure all by myself. But we find out that it's the same angel as what Joshua saw. And Samuel gives him a little bit more information on how Joshua went about it and what he asked, and kind of gave him a clue as to like, hey, you see him again, maybe try this.
Yeah. So that whole thing is a reference to Joshua 5, verse 14 and 15. And this is when Joshua is leading the Israelites again into Jericho. That's it. Couldn't think of it. It's just right on the tip of the tongue. But yeah, these are the verses here. So when Joshua or Samuel tells David, bless you, that Joshua's response to this angel, this great warrior, was he bowed down in worship and asked, like, what do you ask of your servant? And which was really cool. Samuel's like, which is the appropriate response? You should do that.
Yeah.
Totally.
And sorry, I'm trying to remember exactly how the conversation goes. He basically asks the guy, like, all right, so are you for us or for our enemies? And verse 14 says, neither, he replied, but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. Then Joshua fell face down in reverence and asked, what message does my Lord have for his servant? And the commander of the Lord's army replied, take off your sandals, for the place you are standing is holy. And Joshua did so, which sparked a cool conversation between Samuel and David, which is something that, like, we as believers should kind of be reminded of pretty frequently, is like Samuel tells him, a lot of people will ask, like, if God is for us or against us, and we should really be asking ourselves, like, are we on his side?
Exactly.
Like, he's not, I mean, he is for us, but like we need to align ourselves with him, not he align himself with us.
Exactly.
So what do you guys think about, like, that whole conversation?
I thought it was just a really good conversation. It just really makes you think, like, as a believer, it's kind of just like makes you just go, huh? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it was just kind of like a thought that was just like, how many times do we think we know, like, what side God is on? When really I don't know that God always takes a side. And it's not necessarily, like you said, like Samuel said, it's not about us getting God to be on our side. It's, aligning ourselves with what he's doing and where he's going. So it was a really cool conversation.
Yeah, I agree. It was really cool. It kind of felt like a good like mentorship, like a spiritual
yeah.
Is cool to see how they toss it in there. So it's like good discipleship that they're showing.
Yeah.
So it's good to shy away from that.
Yeah.
The like chemistry between David and Samuel in this episode is pretty great. And the more I see Samuel in these episodes, the more I love him.
Yes. He's fantastic.
He's so awesome. But yeah, man, that's such a great reminder though, because like, we all have main character syndrome where we're like, the world revolves around me and everything is about me. And like, it's really not. It's about him. And like, we need to, come in step with him and not the other way around. But we'll kind of touch on Samuel here, because his part of this episode is kind of confined here at David's house with his little powwow with David and Jesse. But he's first mentioned early on in camp when there's like a cool scene between Jonathan and a young boy soldier from the house of Abner, I think, if I'm remembering. Asher. Not Abner. Abner is a person that is a little questionable, but yeah, like David gives him a little pep talk, like, hey, I know there's a whole bunch of them and they have giants, but we have the Lord. And like, he walks away and he's like, the young kid's like, oh, is Samuel coming? Because that's tradition, right? And Jonathan's like,
we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah.
Maybe.
Definitely, man.
Yeah, I love how oh man, what's his name? The guy who hates David.
Joab.
Yeah, he's like, did you just give him some false hope? Jonathan's like, yes. False hope is better than no hope. But yeah, Samuel, I love what you said there, Tim. Like, you really see him like disciple, mentor, like take David under his wing and offer him some explanation of some of the stuff that he's been, going through, especially since being anointed. And yeah, it's really cool to see that at like aspect, because like we've said this entire season, the Bible's not super detailed on a lot of things, so it's cool to see, like, I don't know, maybe that's how they were together. But yeah, I don't know, what do you think about the Samuel and David's relationship in this episode, Nina?
Yeah, like, I feel like it kind of makes sense that it wasn't just like Samuel anointed David as king and then just disappeared and didn't, but I think so like it makes sense that he kind of stuck around and mentored him a little bit, because David being a kid and being a shepherd and musician, like, he doesn't really know the things of God. And back then too, like, the things of God were confined to the priesthood and to the prophets. And so though, like, common folk, I guess you would say, like, didn't necessarily have like access like that to God, where they would have visions or interactions like that. And so for Samuel to tell him what's going on and to mentor him like that, that I like that they showed that. I like that they went that route, because it really does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's something I think that we forget about sometimes when we read through Old Testament stories and stuff. Like, that was before like the Holy Spirit was widely available to everyone.
Right.
So like God only talked to certain people through like very certain specific means. So it's not like they didn't have the luxury that we have today where everyone has access to the Holy Spirit and be able to like converse directly with God all the
Right.
time.
Right.
But yeah, man, some of the things that Samuel said with David and Jesse too, I think were really cool and profound. Like I love he again reminded David that God doesn't look at the outward but at the heart. And I was looking through and basically this is back to the episode where Samuel comes to David's house and anoints him. Like that whole interaction is basically 1 Samuel 16. Like, so like they did such a good job with it.
They
It's so
did.
good. But I love how David's like being, the young, fiery person that he is, and just asking so many questions of like, okay, well then like why am I not out there with him? Like if you came and you anointed me, then like why am I just sitting here in a field and not doing anything? Like when will it be time? And so Samuel's just like, you ask too many questions, play me another song.
Yes. I wonder if God's like that sometimes with us,
Yeah.
We ask him very similar questions, like you told me we were going to do this, and here we are sitting here not doing anything, it seems like. And,
I think he 100% reacts that way.
Yeah, he's like, you asked too many questions. Play me another song. Sing to me.
Yeah, but no, it's such a good reminder too, because like sometimes we get so wrapped up in getting all the answers that we want or think we need that we like lose sight of what's happening right now,
Right.
And like that's something that Becca and I are kind of like going through at the moment, well, and have been for the last, I don't know, how long's it been? 2 years?
Yeah.
Since we sold everything and moved across the country. Yeah, so like we've been asking a lot of questions and wondering why certain things haven't happened yet, and then this episode just like just stop asking, man. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah. All in due time.
Yeah. And then go ahead.
Time with this episode too, I like how we're seeing a lot more of the emboldened David that like we expect to see by the time he sees Goliath, because like he was a lot more timid before, and I was a little bit confused and worried about how he was going to become like who calls out Goliath in the most gangster of ways. And I was just like, I don't know if it's the same person, but I feel like from the moment he was anointed and everything like that, and being in the palace and everything like that, it really emboldened him in the right way to where like he would, this character in the show would for sure be the type to be like, hey,
They're doing a really good job like with developing David's character, and I think it's really cool to see just like how he has started, as the timid shepherd, nobody liked him, whatever, to now where he's being more bold and is speaking his mind and speaking from his heart, and just showing that he can handle basically anything. But yeah,
man. And speaking of his heart, I love how, so like when Samuel comes, he's like, oh yeah, we're gonna do what I said I was coming to do last time, like let's make sacrifice. So they do, and I love Samuel's like, so how did you pick this offering that you had? And he's like, well, the best of the flock. And he's like, yeah, but why? And he's like, well, because, it's our law. It's the law of Moses, right? And he's like, yeah, of course. And then like he sends David off and then he like schools Jesse.
Yep.
It's a good object lesson.
Yeah, exactly. Man, I'm telling you, Samuel was just like so good in the like
It's awesome.
7 minutes he was in this episode.
Love
Yeah,
it.
he's just like basically Jesse. So like, why are you not sacrificing your best? Like David, send him out there. And it's such a good reminder too. This episode's just full of good reminders. Like God only cares when we give him our best. Like a sacrifice, anything less than best is meaningless to God. So like,
Right.
whether it's, a financial sacrifice or like a time sacrifice, like this gets to me sometimes where I'm like, yeah, I think I can like squeeze in my Bible reading like here, and then like when I'm done, I'll still be able to like do this, and like that might be like a silly example, but like that's not sacrificing my best time when I can just like find like 20 or 30 minutes instead of like sacrificing the thing that I was like going to do for the Lord. Yeah, I don't know. It was a little convicting, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, and then Jesse asks Samuel like why God picked David, because he's got that like fiery heart, untamed personality kind of. And Samuel's like, which was, a cool little nod to David being, a man after God's own heart. He's like, well, maybe that's because that's how the Lord is. Like he's got a fiery heart too, and maybe that's what he sees in David. And I was like, oh, yeah, he does. There's just so much. Samuel is a gold mine this episode.
Yeah. And one of the things I love about the story of David too, in this like beginning portion too, is just like I feel like it just parallels with life so much, where it's like you're, like there's a promise of God on your life, and then it doesn't come to fruition right away. Mm-hmm. And you have to go back to doing what you were always doing. You're like, well, wait a minute, what did you just say? Like, why am I not progressing? And it's because you're not ready for it. Like God might be telling you that's what's going to happen, but there's got to be some character that is developed in the in that time where like David learned some things when he went into the palace to play for Saul, and then going back to the field, not being able to go to battle, there's things that he's learning, and his whole life, with like defeating the lion and the bear and stuff. So like it's just I feel like it just mirrors life so well, where it's like like God says, hey, this is what's going to happen, and you're like, it doesn't look like it. And but there you can just kind of, it's a reminder that there are things growing in that season before you get to that point, because God has to prepare you for it, because you're not ready for it yet.
Yeah.
So
preach. Yeah, man. So I think Jesse felt a little like I did in that moment.
Yeah, right.
A little convicted, and he's like, okay,
yeah, for sure.
Okay, I get it. We'll let David go. But before he lets David go, let's talk about David like having that vision again, where he is at the stream in front of the commander of the Lord's army.
Mm-hmm.
He bows down, asks what do you ask of your servant, and he like puts his sword down, which the sword is so cool, had like all these like wingding fonts etched on.
My favorite font.
Yeah, dude. Just been waiting for that to be used for like 30 years. Yeah, so he takes his sandals off, which, man, the way they laced up their shoes, man. Like, I don't remember the last time I've tied shoes. It's been like 10 years. I've just been wearing slip-ons. Couldn't imagine. Yeah, like 5 minutes later, after he undoes his sandals and takes a few steps into the stream, he reaches down and finds a smooth white stone covered in blood. And so, we're getting a little foreshadowing of what the Lord is asking of David. And I love how, like, when he like wakes up and he's like, why do you ask this of me? Like, which, we've all been there. But yeah, I wish I read Wingdings so I could see what was on the sword. You guys, any guesses?
No, it's a hard font to decipher because there's multiple letters that use the same arrows and weird symbols. So only the Lord knows.
It's a shame. It's a shame. Yeah. So then,
my language though.
Yeah. So the next day, Jesse prepares a donkey and takes David inside the house and kind of gives him a little backstory of his mother's final words. What do you guys think about this? Because I know you were waiting to see about David and his mother because of the role they were kind of portraying that his mother had in his life. But yeah, I really want to know what you guys thought about. Maybe you could walk us through if you remember, and then let us know how you felt.
So yeah, she's on her deathbed. She was mauled by the lion and she's dying. And
thanks, David.
Yeah, way to go.
Way to go.
So and David's with her, and then as a small boy, and then believe that Jesse sends him away, and David's standing out there, and like they're whispering to each other, Jesse and what's her name, Nisbet, something
like that. I don't
know. Anyway,
yeah.
Jesse's or David's mom, and what, I don't even remember what she said.
She told him, let him rise.
Yeah.
Like a fine dough.
Just let him. She was an avid fan of bakery.
It wasn't the unleavened, feast. Definitely wasn't that.
Well, honestly, the first thing that came to my mind was The Dark Knight Rises. Like, that's what came to my mind. I was like, let him rise. And I just saw Christian Bale climbing out of that pit.
Where is she?
He beats Goliath and walks over to Saul. Where is she?
I love it. Every time I talk crap about David, or one of us does, I can't not look at our background and him just glaring over your frame.
He's
What'd
like,
you say?
Excuse you.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
I'm sorry.
But she said, let him rise. And then, yeah, I don't remember what else happened in that moment. It's been a couple days since we watched.
So at that point, Jesse, as we find out that he actually cares for David a lot more than he's let on, which I kind of love that.
Yeah.
Because this whole time, like, you think that he's being harsh, but he's actually trying to just shelter him.
Yeah, being protective.
Yeah.
Well, and he said, like, every time I sent you away, it wasn't because I didn't love you. It was because, like,
because David is like the last piece of his mother that he has. Because Jesse was married, his first wife
died,
bore all of his other children. She died. Then he married David's mother in the show, who was not Jewish, and it was I think he said unlawful marriage because she wasn't Jewish. Oh man, I wish I wrote down. I think they even said like where she was from.
It's from Ruth was
Moab, right?
yeah, it was a Moabite, was from Moab, and she ended up marrying Boaz, who was an Israelite.
Mm-hmm.
Then their son was Obed, and then Obed's son was Jesse.
Right.
So Jesse comes from already a mixed line of Israelite and Moab, Israel and Moab. And so, yeah, but I think he brought up that David's mother was also a Moabite.
And
that must have been what it is, yeah.
The Jewish tradition also, when that talks about David's mother, also mentions that she may have not been actually divorced from her first husband. And so in Jewish law, at that point, she's still married to this other man, whether or not they got married. It wasn't a lawful wedding at that point. It wasn't a lawful union because she still belongs to another man.
Right.
Yeah.
Which would still hold up today.
Yeah, weird.
But also, just a little side note, a little shout out to the last episode. I believe Jesse even refers to like his mother's blood, like Jesse's mother's. I think that's who he was talking about, or he could have been talking about David, but I think he's talking about himself. His mother's bloodline being tainted, which, if you remember the unhinged spiel I went on at the very beginning of the episode, if you don't, you can refer back, and that could be what he was talking about that bloodline being tainted. But yeah, so we get a little backstory. Now, not much, if anything, is said of David's mother in the Bible, so this is kind of all just speculation / storytelling. But it does kind of reconcile, like you said, Tim, Jesse's relationship with David, because in the Bible, like, their relationship was good as far as we're told. So it was a little shocking at first to see how they interacted with each other, but then this episode like makes it make sense. But yeah, so David's sad hearing all this stuff, and the other thing that his mother tells Jesse before she dies is to let him rise, like you said, but then basically to not like prevent him from living out the dreams that she had about David. So, you know, it's all emotional. David's a blubbering mess on the floor. And Jesse's like, all right, I've prepared the donkey. I must take these supplies to the battlefield. And David's like, no more tears. Let's go. Like, he's so excited now. But yeah, so that kind of wraps up David, Samuel, and Jesse in this episode. The last thing we see of David, he's, you know, heading off to the battlefield. Let's talk about Saul. And yeah, basically the rest of the episode is about Saul and his family. So, you know, they're setting up camp. We have the Israelites on one hill over here, the Philistines, the four of the five have united. They have this cool little like standoff in the valley where like each Philistine king like rides up into the middle of the valley and like plants their flag
or sends their guy because they're chicken.
Yeah, I love that part. Yeah, it's like, oh, they couldn't even do it themselves, cowards. And they're sitting there kind of playing some mind games, doing some psychological warfare, beating their drums. And the Israelites are just like standing there like, okay. And then all of a sudden, Jeff
Jurassic
Goldblum's Jeff Goldblum's glass of water starts
Yes.
shaking. How did you know I was going there?
Because I said the same thing to Tim when we were watching it. I was
it's
like, I'm
almost
waiting
like
for the Jurassic Park moment.
it's almost like the three of us are together like multiple days a week for like 2
3
years.
days in a row.
All of a sudden Goliath comes walking through. Man, I loved they have him walking past some people on horseback, and he's still like a foot taller than them,
towering over them.
So crazy. But he comes out and basically taunts the Israelites, and it's extremely difficult to hear what he says because of the way they make his voice sound.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. But essentially, man, let me pull up the scripture, because basically what he says is like straight out of scripture.
Yeah.
He 1 Samuel 17, 8-10 says, Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man, have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us. Then the Philistines said, this day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man, let us fight each other. So essentially,
basically word for
Saul
word
is like pooping his pants.
Yes.
And this sends him in down a very dark path while he's sitting on his horse. And he like goes into essentially like a coma like state of torment from that the spirit of torment that basically was put on him once Samuel removed the anointing.
Spilled his Gatorade everywhere.
Yeah. He did. I do love how he before they go out, the scene with Abner and Saul, which kind of mirrors like Jesus in with the disciples, like, who do you say I am? But like
it
obviously
like, tell me I'm pretty.
Exactly, yeah. Obviously not the same. And but basically that's what Jesus says to his disciples. But Saul needed a pep talk.
He said,
before
who am
he
I?
went out there.
And Abner gives him a very straightforward answer, and he's like, no, more.
Yeah, but who am I to you?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you're blah blah blah, you saved me, pulled me out from where I thought I could never escape, blah blah blah. And Saul's like, yeah, that's right.
Darn right.
Don't you forget it.
Yeah,
that's who I am. That's right.
But it wasn't enough. It was not enough.
No.
It was not. But I had to look up because they did a very good job of showing this like daily occurrence of Goliath coming out, taunting the Israelites. And I loved how they marked the times with all the spears that he would just jam into the ground.
Yeah.
But did you guys, what was going through your mind? I'll tell you what I guess I was thinking, and then I'll see if you guys thought the same. I had no idea, like, if that was, I couldn't remember if it was like a one-time thing or if this happened multiple times. And I looked it up.
40
and
days.
Apparently 40 days. They just stood there staring at each other, and Goliath came out, yelled at them.
40 days.
Yeah. Did you guys like remember that, or were you like me?
Yeah, Nina was like, how long did this go on for?
Well,
and I looked at her like 40 days.
I thought it was 40 days, but 40 days is referenced a lot in the Bible. So I didn't know if I was confusing it with another time that 40 days was mentioned. But yeah, it was 40 days every time, like day after day coming out.
And one thing I liked also before all this, before Saul goes into his little coma, is like he's so rattled that
yeah.
after he falls, he's stripping off his armor in front of everyone, which very bad look.
Yeah.
And
Not great.
basically strips down to his tunic, which is basically their underwear at the time.
Yeah.
And he's just like, find somebody, I'll get my daughter and whatever.
Forgive all their debts. Just go find someone.
Just when David's ears perked up, he's like, your daughter, you say?
Yeah.
What?
You had me at your daughter.
Well, I think too at this point, like they still think that God is still with them in this, that God is still going to that God.
Well, the Israelites in general do.
The Israelites do, yeah.
But Saul knows the
Saul
truth.
knows the truth, but I think he's in denial of what the truth is. Obviously,
Yeah.
He wants to remain in power so badly.
Yeah.
I think Jonathan knows, but I think he's still he's trying to hold out hope that God is still with them because he's trying to keep a pure heart before God. But yeah, they're all trying to, but at the same time they're not, because they are trying to they do a great job of showing they're trying to figure out how to go about this in their own way without even consulting what God wants them to do.
Yeah.
And that was the tradition of Samuel being there. They would, do a sacrifice. Samuel would perform a sacrifice right before the battle, and they would always have success. So, anyway, they did a great job.
That 40 days of torment and drums.
40 days.
Even Israelites drums again. Stop it.
It shows a lot of patience on the Philistines' part, waiting 40 days. They saw Saul coming off his horse, taking off his armor. They're like, we could probably just take them right now, but they waited.
They did
40 days.
But yeah, you bring up a good point. There was some dissent among the Israelites. Do you remember which tribe left? I forgot. Which one?
Is it Zebulun?
I believe so.
Or Naphtali? No, I think it was Zebulun. Zebulun.
Great character in Star Wars Rebels.
Yes.
Yes.
Zebulun.
But yeah, so they take off. They're like, yeah, I don't this is not gonna end well.
Yeah.
So
no thanks.
And I love Abner trying his best at shaming them.
Yeah.
When we win,
losers,
our sons and their sons are gonna tell stories. Oh, you fled. And old Team Zeb's like, all right, well then you go fight him.
Cool, bro.
So they take off, and then our favorite Adriel's like, well, if Saul's not gonna lead us, I'll lead us. And if we're gonna lose, let's at least lose valiantly. Yeah.
I'll find my way into the royal palace.
Yeah, exactly. And Jonathan's basically like, dude, just
sit down.
Stop.
Never stop.
Are you gonna go fight the giant?
Adriel's like, oh, you're gonna be like your crazy dad. I'm like, oh, come on. That's low. That's low. I did like their interaction, Saul and Adriel, though, at the very beginning of the gathering, where they meet, kind of shake hands, and he's like, we'll fight as one, and then he pulls them close, and he's like, #never forget, though.
#never forget.
Harambe.
Yeah. Yeah, but Adriel's like, I still remember what you did. But today we'll fight as one.
Yeah. Put it aside for now.
Yeah. So, this is going on. Word gets back to the palace of what's going down. The queen just totally loses it, even though I thought she had already totally lost it, but now she totally loses it.
She's completely given up.
I don't want to hear that name in my presence again.
I mean,
it
was intense.
Mikhail's like, oh. It's bad when the one that we've been saying is the current worst in the palace is just like, whoa, mom, too far.
The mom has literally become the turd.
Yeah.
Every time
Speaking
we
of-
think we can get lower, they get lower.
Yeah. Speaking of, we haven't seen the OG turd in quite a while. I wonder if he'll make an appearance in episode 8.
Like the very end
Eshball.
of the cliffhanger,
I don't.
maybe.
In
I don't
his
know that
case,
he'll
a
show-
dingleberry.
Just hanging on by their.
Come on, that was a good one.
That was a good one.
That was so good.
I don't think he's gonna show up in the last episode. Maybe next season.
Yeah,
Maybe next season.
I'm gonna throw my guess out and say middle of next season.
Because scripturally, he doesn't just disappear. There's other things
Yeah.
that happens with him.
Mhm.
So
Oh, should
spoilers.
They said they're renewing for season 2,
Yes.
so there will be another season.
There will be another
That's
season.
exciting.
They had like ton of views, like the first 17 days or whatever.
Yeah.
10 days. What was it? I don't remember what it was.
Not
saw-
picture handy anymore.
I have a stat on that, but I didn't fact check it.
Wow.
Well,
Where's
it was
Dylan
fun
when you need him?
before, so-
Where's Dylan when you need him? Oh, here we go. House of David will be back for season 2. This was posted by Amazon MGM Studios. The series has garnered 22 million viewers in the first 17 days and is in the top 10 new series debuts in the U.S. to date.
Fire. Yeah. Just goes to show you, people are hungry.
Mhm.
And shows like this and The Chosen, net positive.
Yes.
But yeah. Word gets back to the palace. The queen loses it. Mikhail runs to the library. What was she looking for exactly? She grabs a scroll.
My guess is it's going to be the Song of Moses
Mm.
because that is what calmed her father before.
Is she
And
going
so
to
she's
sing it to
trying her
him?
best.
Is she going to sing
Yeah.
it to him?
Maybe
Did she
David-
memorize David's
David
song?
actually left her the harp tabs. And
He taught her how to play the harp when they were
Yeah.
together, and now she's a harp protege, and will be able to play the harp and sing to her father to
There you
soothe
go.
him.
yeah. But I do love her heart here though, because she's
Yes.
like she's getting the scroll and then packing up to go to the battlefield. Merib like runs into her and she's like, "Where are you going?" She's like, "To soothe Dad. Like that's
Somebody's
all I
gonna-
can do." Like, and she's like, "Are you crazy?" But there was a cool like little bonding moment between the two of them.
Yes.
And eventually Merib's like, "Okay, let's go." So they ride off to go help their dad together, which is really cool. So maybe she's
Sisters.
maybe she's not as turdish as we thought. I guess we'll see. So that, and then kind of the last thing with Saul, and then we'll talk about Jonathan and Abner a little bit. But Saul again has that nightmare, the vision of seeing Jonathan killed in battle, and then he himself being killed in battle. And there's so much I want to say about this, but I don't want to right now at this moment because for fear of show spoilers.
Mm.
Well, okay.
It's in the Bible. If you haven't
Spoiler
read
alert. Yeah, spoiler alert. If you don't want to hear this, skip ahead like a minute. But yeah, I love it because like I feel like people are gonna think that this happens in the battle with Goliath, but it's like showing their ultimate end way later on.
Yep.
And I just think it's so cool and like some really like far ahead planning by the showrunners. So they must have like a lot of David's, like they must be wanting to tell like the actual story of David, not just this little piece here, which is really exciting.
Fantastic.
But yeah, okay. Spoiler over.
There's a very mild spoiled.
Yeah, I know. But if people haven't been haven't read the Bible and they're watching the show and they're listening, I didn't want to like give up a potential like curveball.
Fair enough.
I feel like we've already spoiled a lot though in our past episodes. So
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
We're turning over a new leaf. Yeah. We're going to be so much more kind to our viewers.
It only took us to the second to last episode.
Never too late to do it right.
Yeah, so not much else to talk about Goliath because he's just every morning coming out yelling at the Israelites. Abner, he's just kind of like trying to keep everything held together the best he can while Saul is like out, off taking a nap, and literal giants like screaming at them. When Adriel like pulls his little stunt of like wanting to take over and march the men into battle, after Jonathan says his piece and kind of walks away, Adriel's like, or Abner is like, you need to take a chill pill, bro. And
sit down.
next time you say like Saul's name or Jonathan's name will be your last. Like, if you don't stop, I will make you stop, and you're not gonna like it. Jonathan in this episode, I told Becca during the episode, I was like, I can't wait for Jonathan and David to start their bromance. Like, I'm so excited for them.
Yes.
But I love Jonathan in this episode, just like trying so hard to, shine the light of hope for this very hopeless situation that the army finds itself in. Sticking up for the Lord, for his dad, even though he knows like his dad is, not exactly in the right, but like still being honoring. There's a moment here where he like goes in to the armory tent and like puts on the helmet and he's like getting geared up, and Abner comes in. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm gonna go fight him.
Let me fight him.
That helmet will be on him.
Dude, I know. And
his hair is pushed out. Like,
yeah, he looks so funny, dude. I thought the same thing.
It was not sized for him.
No. They had to account for his giant puffy hair. Yeah. But I love, this is another one of those like great real life parallels where like God has a plan, a solution to this problem, and like how we can be staring in the face of our circumstance, right, and become very impatient because the circumstance is very daunting, and then we try to take it into our own hands, like we see Jonathan getting ready to do here. That never works. I'll just help you guys out, anyone out there listening who might be going through that. It never works out. So
God's saying,
yeah, just patience. I know it's hard and it sucks, but patience.
Well, what's crazy too is like Saul went through the same thing earlier. They didn't show it in the show, but in scripture, he was fighting the Philistines and they were going to be overcome. Like they were getting closer and closer, and Samuel hadn't arrived yet to do the sacrifice. And Saul's like, just let me do it. And he's like, we're going to get overrun. Let me just do it. And he does it. And as he's in the middle of doing it, Samuel just walks up right behind him.
Hey, buddy.
And was like, what did you do? Like, so yeah, like that impatience when you're staring into the face of fear, though, like you can be prompted to do things in your own way that is not what God wants you to do. So
yeah,
totally get it.
And those are like extremely difficult things to do.
Yes.
Patience is the most difficult thing to exercise.
Never ask for patience, because then God will give you opportunities to exercise your patience, to grow in patience.
Oh yeah.
And those are never fun.
Yeah. But we do get story time with Abner here in the tent. And he reminds Jonathan of the time that he snuck off at night
Mhm.
with some people and defeated the Philistines in a different battle, and how that turned the tide, right? And
Mhm.
I love it. It's an awesome reference to, let's see, I had it pulled up somewhere.
First Samuel 14.
There you go. That's right. But in scripture, Jonathan sneaks off with his armor bearer to a Philistine outpost, and I love it. The armor bearer is like, I mean, I'm gonna go with you, but are you sure we should be doing this? And Jonathan's like, yeah, I mean, God will protect us, even though it's just two of us. Like, he would protect our whole army. Why wouldn't he protect just us?
Mhm.
And the armor bearer's like, fair. And Jonathan's like, all right, listen, we'll go up to the outpost, and if they say, come on up, then we'll know God's with us, and we'll go up and we'll win. And if they don't, then we just won't go. And so the armor bearer's like, that makes total sense to me. So they go up, and the Philistines are like, oh, just you two? Come on up. We'll teach you a lesson. And Jonathan, I just imagine, like, looks over at his armor bearer. He's like,
See?
and so they go up and they kill, a handful of Philistines, and then, like, chaos breaks out at their camp, and they, like, kind of defeat themselves, whatever. But this is, like, an earlier battle, right? And Abner tells that story. It's slightly different in the show, but it kind of gives Jonathan and Abner this idea that maybe Jonathan should take some men and go sneak in at nighttime and see if he can kill Goliath.
And he just so happens to have a bunch of mercenaries right there.
Yeah. Who are from
Egypt.
Yes, Egypt. And they're pretty hard-looking dudes, very dirty, as you'd expect mercenaries to be, apparently.
All mercenaries are dirty, obviously.
Yeah.
They don't have time to shower and clean themselves. They're too busy killing people.
Exactly. So there's like a little plan brewing there. And speaking of dirty people who are not from Israel,
Hebrew Doug.
yeah, but he's not Hebrew Doug. He's
Edomite Doug.
Edomite Doug, which doesn't roll off the tongue.
He's Hebrew Doug.
And actually, it's a Doeg.
Doeg, yes.
Doug.
Yeah, which is just a weird way to say Doug.
They all have impediments, actually.
He's just like chilling next to Saul in his tent when David goes in to kind of, like, I guess, say his goodbyes before he sneaks off and does this night stealth mission for Abner. Do you guys remember this conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, take us through it.
Kind of. I don't know if I remember it well enough to take us through it, but
just the main idea.
Yeah, he goes in and he basically says,
Jonathan's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, what I always do.
Yeah.
just chill by your dad's bed.
Yeah. Very concerning if you know anything about what Hebrew Doug does.
Right.
Yeah.
Why does he always hang out with your dad? Yeah, he basically says he's there to kind of like offer aid as he always does, and when we already know that he was the catalyst for the whole thing. And Jonathan basically tells him, like, I don't care what you have to say, just
get out,
go away, please.
Yeah, he's basically like, if you just tell me who Samuel anointed,
that's right.
I'll go kill him.
Right.
I'll take care of the problem.
Yeah, Jonathan's like, yeah, let's not do that.
Or not.
Have you tried not?
He doesn't he end up threatening Doug too?
Probably.
Jonathan, I think like right before he walks out.
Oh yeah, he does.
He lays down this line that like it was a mic drop moment where he just like, I will personally kill you, basically. Like
and Hebrew Doug's like, yeah, I'd like to see you try.
or it was something about like, I will see the life drain from your eyes. And Hebrew Doug's like, that'd be interesting to see. Like
neat. Take
Yeah,
notes.
like both out of curiosity, but also like a very frightening threat from Hebrew Doug. If you know how he gets down, he's probably like, yeah, that would be interesting. I don't think you could do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that happens, and then we see Jonathan slinking off into the night with his band of Egyptian mercenaries. Now, I tried to look up in Google real quick before we recorded if Jonathan, if he did this before David came.
We were wondering
And
the same thing.
I couldn't find anything. I don't recall this at all. It could just be like a cool additional reference to the whole like outpost story that we just talked about. But I do think, didn't some Israelites go into the camp and like not succeed and anger Goliath?
I don't remember.
I don't think
I
so.
don't know. Yeah, it's been a while since I've read this story. And right now I'm in the very fascinating and exciting book of Numbers, so
Riveting.
Yeah. so you don't even know, guys.
Is it Balaam's donkey in Numbers though? That story? I'm pretty sure that's in the book of Numbers, and that's an interesting story.
It's one of Nina's favorites.
It's true. Nothing like a talking donkey, you know?
It's like probably the only interesting story that happened in the book of Numbers.
Yeah. They make all the stories interesting. Shrek, Numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
donkey, know it's gonna be a good story.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So do you guys think that Jonathan and his little band of brothers will make it into the camp, or like that whole scene is happening at night, and then like the way the episode actually ends is David like heading into the battlefield, which is morning or during the day. So either that happened before Jonathan like in his group went out at night, or that David leaving to the battlefield happened like directly after that. So do you think Jonathan and his group make it to the Philistines? What do you think is going to transpire there? I'm
wondering if it's going to turn into like something happens that stops them. Mission? I don't think there's going to be a rescue mission necessarily, but I'm wondering if like something happens and it stops them from
entering the camp,
going through it, or maybe Goliath isn't sleeping because he's drinking like 3.5 wineskins full of wine, just a little bit of a buzz on, and just kills all the Egyptians. And Jonathan's like, nope. So I don't know what they're gonna do, but I don't think they're gonna actually have them go into the camp. I'd be a little bit surprised if they did. No. But they do have the disclaimer that they're not necessarily trying to be 100% biblical on everything. So
what if the show just like takes a giant dump on all of us, and like David takes the spear like we saw in the first episode, and Jonathan kills him, and then everyone's just like, boo.
Well, it was funny because like they showed like, so Jonathan goes off with the mercenaries, and like the episode ends with Goliath coming out on that next day, like it seemed like the next day. And so Tim goes like, Jonathan obviously didn't succeed, because here Goliath is the next morning.
Yeah.
That's what it seemed like, at least.
Unless there's some weird timey-wimey stuff going on.
Timey-wimey stuff. Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey. Yes.
Nerds.
I
Time
was
keeping.
sad. I was very sad that like I was really hoping we get that voiceover from the very first episode.
It can still happen next
Yeah,
episode.
that's true. That's true.
Because the fight hasn't actually happened yet.
She's almost there.
Goliath is still standing there saying, "Ah!"
Yeah, he's got to be like
Guys.
he's got to be coming out like running out of spears to jam into the ground.
I know. I was like, how does he have so many spears?
At some point,
Well,
like,
it's
do
not
they?
normal spears either? They're giant spears.
Because
Actually,
you
have a
start like
blacksmith there.
turning them over, and when you see the like pointy end up, it's like 2 days, and like pointy end down is only
They
1
have a
day.
Philistine blacksmith there making him a new spear every day.
It's like another one.
Yeah, he's just getting so annoyed back there. Yeah, guys, one more episode. You got anything else you feel like you absolutely have to say about this episode, or what's to come next week?
I'm excited about the finale. I think it's gonna be really well done. Like I was a little nervous at certain points on how they were gonna get there, but they've done some good character development. And I think they've been very tasteful so far with how they've gone about things. All of our pastor friends that we talked to are like loving it. Our pastor watched episode 6 and it was like, oh, it's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
He has to go back and watch the other 5 before that, but he was excited about that.
Yeah.
So I think they're doing a great job. I'm excited to see how the finale goes and what cliffhanger they leave us
Longer
with.
finale? Do you think it'll be a longer finale, or do you think it'll be the custom?
They've been hanging out right at an hour, so I don't know that they'll do longer. I could see maybe it being an hour and a half.
I mean, I'm trying to think of like, so basically, David's on his way
he's
to bring grilled cheese sandwiches to his brothers, and then
he's got to try on Saul's armor.
Yeah, like there's
not much left.
There's not much left, but there wasn't much leading up to this either. They've gotten 8 episodes out of it, so
True.
Who knows? But I do like how they, because like in the previews and stuff, they showed Mikhail on the battlefield, like in the tent with David and stuff. So I was like, historically, also like not like it's not only not in the Bible, but also historically, women weren't there typically. Like they weren't at the battle scene. So like, but her being like they've made that even make sense. Like they've thought of everything.
Which even Mira was like, we don't go there.
Yeah, we don't go there. Not for us. Why would you want to go there? And I do like that they've been kind of showing, because like I know we were concerned about, at least Tim and I were concerned about them showing his relationship with his mother and that being like where he was getting his faith from. And so I do think they've made a turn to where it's been showing him more being reliant upon God rather than just what his mother would say. So it's
his personal faith versus the faith of his mother.
Yeah. Which is good.
Which I think is a good transition because he now has experienced the fullness of God and it's helped grow his faith. So I think it's
because we're all faced with that choice eventually. So it's another good realization, in this, episode. There's a lot of good but biblical stuff in it. Even though good.
I'm not I don't know as far as runtime goes. I don't know. I mean, they could stretch it, of course. I just don't know how that would feel. Like if it would feel justified to have the extra runtime,
Right.
If there's enough story to tell. I am interested to see how accurate they are with David's trash talk.
Oh, I hope it's 100% word for word.
They've been doing stuff like word for word, like Goliath taunting the Israelites was pretty spot on. Word for word. Samuel's talk with Saul. The whole scene where he anoints David was pretty much word for word. Like I expect it to be very spot on. I'm
so excited for it because that's one of my favorite moments with David, where he's just like, Nope. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine?
First words back then.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, dude.
Mikhail's gonna be clutching her pearls like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. You're right, Mayor. We don't belong out here. Yes. It should be good. Should be good. I'm looking forward to it. And it's super exciting that they are renewed for a second season. So
Yeah.
keep watching the show and keep listening to the podcast.
Yeah.
And then we'll do the same thing for season 2. Hopefully it isn't, 3 years between seasons. Which, my buddy Nick, who I do Showboys with, we're talking about that the other day, like how crazy long it is between seasons of shows these days.
Yeah.
But he made a good point. Like, the quality of shows we get now are like the quality of movies, and it takes them a long time to film, produce, movies. So
yeah, makes sense.
I guess
Bumped
it's
it out pretty fast though. It's because they never stop recording.
yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. Excited to see what happens and excited to see the finale next week. Can't believe season's already almost over, but here we are. Make sure you subscribe here. Leave a comment. Let us know what you thought about the episode. Head over to bearfruit.media. Yes?
Yeah,
Yes.
you got it.
Yes. I'll pretend like I remember next week. And maybe I won't ask you if I got it right. But yeah, check out what Tim and Nina are doing. When's your next episode? Did it come out last week?
Thursday the 3rd, April 3rd.
Thursday the 3rd. Nice. What's it about?
Faith.
Faith in general.
Yeah, generalize on that.
Just how the Bible defines faith and what it actually looks like practically. So yeah, it was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
So
very nice.
Good stuff here. Again, looking at the giant board.
The giant board.
Which is now organized.
Oh my gosh, our tape fell off halfway down.
I've been staring this whole time.
It should probably just be like a normal size dry erase board for Goliath. You think?
It would be like a little notebook. Like you can scribble a couple of notes on there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, go check them out. Bearfruit.media. Subscribe to all their stuff and give their podcast a listen. It's great. If you're Jesus curious, as I like to say, yeah, go check them out. It's great. Thank you guys for being with me, and we'll do this again next week.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
I've been doing this for 5 years, and I still suck at ending episodes.
Yeah, it's